And out of nowhere, she says, "Who here is from Salem?" I raised my hand. I was like, I just got back from Salem. And she looked at me and she said, "I'm looking at you and I just feel a hand around my throat." And she looked at me dead in the eyes and she said, "I need to do a past life regression on you." Welcome to the first episode of Shattering Reality. I am your host, Sabrina Weibel, and on this podcast, we break through the common limitations of modern reality and expand your thinking as we delve into topics of quantum physics, spirituality, channeling, and much more. Nothing is off the table here as we work to uncover human behavior and the secret powers of the mind and universe as we get into esoteric and sometimes controversial topics. In today's episode, I talked about my crazy past life regression that completely changed my life, and I truly hope you enjoyed this episode of this wild ride of me going through many lifetimes, and I hope it brings you some insight and you some clarity on your life and benefit you in some way. Let's get into the episode. Wow, I have thought about talking about this to the public for quite some time now. I've felt really called to share it, but it's very vulnerable, it's very personal, and it took me quite a long time to process everything that came through in this past life regression. And I thought, what better way to kick off this Shattering Reality podcast than to talk about my insane past life regression experience. So with that being said, I'm going to share all of the details with you because why not? Every detail kind of ties in with the whole big picture, and it'll just really make you think. And I need to start off this entire process of how I even came across doing a past life regression in the first place. I need to start off from the beginning. So I'm going to talk to you guys like how the past life regression even happened in the first place. I'm going to talk to you guys about the past life regression experience itself. I'm going to talk to you guys about the integration part of it, because that's a whole nother thing in itself. And then at the end, I want to talk to you guys about, if you're interested in past life regression, I want to talk to you about who I did mine with, because she's absolutely incredible and I highly, highly recommend her. She's amazing. And how you can work with her, the do's and don'ts of past life regression. And yeah, so let's get into it. I was not really set on wanting a past life regression to begin with. My sister Deanna and I had been going to Salem, Massachusetts every October for the past 3 or 4 years. And this was October of 2021 was when we were in Salem, and I felt the urge. I was just really interested. I felt there was some part of me that was like, you should get a past life regression done. And so we're in Salem and I'm like, you know what? If I can find somebody here to do a past life regression, there were many people there that could do that. I was like, let's do it. Why not? And I went to one shop. The woman had just left, called another shop. They were booked out. Went to another shop and the person wasn't there at that hour that I could have gone it. And it was just these random things that just weren't working out for me to get my past life regression done in Salem, Massachusetts. So, and if you aren't familiar with Salem, Massachusetts, it's where they've done the witch trials in the past, and now they call it the witch city. So there's tons of stuff to do there in October. And we have loved going there every year. But I told myself, what's meant to be will be. If nobody here, if it's just not working out here, that's fine. Whoever I'm meant to do this past life regression with, I'll meet them at some point, at some time. I'm not worried about it. The very next week, I get back from Salem. I get back home, and really weird synchronicity. One of my best friends' moms, who I recently had found out was spiritual, started this spiritual club thing at her bakery after hours. And so all these hella spiritual people would go into her bakery after hours, and we would just have these meetings and talk about really spiritual concepts. And I was like, you know what, I don't know anyone that's going to be there. This is my first time at the meeting or going to one of these meetings. I think it was my first time. And I was like, I don't know who I'm going to meet there. Whatever, I just feel a call to go, even though these are all going to be women who are at least 10 years older than me. I was the youngest person there for sure. It's I feel called to go. So I go to the meeting, and after 15 minutes of being there, this woman walks in, and this woman had a presence like I had never been around before. When she walked into the room, it was like, whoa. It was like all eyes were on her. Like she had just like a potent energy. And I'm pretty sure she was wearing like a cloak the first time I met her. And this woman was named Kuh-loo-nee-how-wee. And she sat down and she's conversing with everyone. And I feel like everyone there was just like mesmerized by her just who she was, her energy. And she's talking about random things, getting to know people. And out of nowhere, she says, "Who here is from Salem?" May I mind you, this was the week I got back from Salem. I'm pretty sure I got back like 2 days prior. And I raised my hand. I was like I just got back from Salem. And she looked at me and she said, "I'm looking at you and I just feel a hand around my throat." And she looked at me dead in the eyes and she said, "I need to do a past life regression on you." It was so crazy because, I was just looking for a past life regression, and she is so tapped in, and she saw that. And you know what's weird about the hand thing? Everything I tell you in this entire past life regression, like everything links together. With the hand thing, it was so strange that she had said that, because this was something I had only told. I have 2 sisters. I'm the youngest of 3 sisters. I had only told my sisters before. For years and years, I have felt this pressure around my throat. And I remember probably 2 years prior to meeting Kalunyahawi and having that experience, I remember telling one of my sisters, I was like, it almost feels like a hand that's around my throat. Like I almost feel like fingers around my throat. Like it's such like a pressure around my throat. And I wasn't really sure what exactly it was. So it was very, very, very synchronistic, very strange that Kalunyahawi said that she felt that hand around my throat when she looked at me. And so fast forward, I think it was like 3 months later. Yeah, because I think it was closer to like February, honestly, was when we finally had done the past life regression. And she takes me under this, it was almost like a hypnotic meditation. So it was like really snowy out. We were supposed to meet in person. Then we ended up having to like FaceTime. So it was like over like a Facebook video call or whatever. So she's sitting on my coffee table and I'm sitting on my couch. And she takes me under this like hypnotic meditation. And we like get spiritual protection, which you connect to one of your spirit guides who wants to step forward and be like a guide and a protector in the spiritual realm through the process. And so in this process of asking a spirit guide to come forward, may I mind you, I have never met like a spirit guide before. This was like a whole nother like spiritual evolution that I was kind of like stepping into. I see a man who was like about in his 40s maybe, had darker hair, a mustache, glasses. He stepped forward. And so I'm describing him to Kalunyahawi, and she's like, "Okay, what's his name?" "His name's Eugene." And so I was like, "Okay, kind of funny name. Like, let's go, Eugene." And in this space of like meeting your spirit guide, you're like in this like beautiful like fairy type forest. It was daytime. I felt like there were almost like sparkles around me. Like I felt like a really magical forest. And I'm closing my eyes. Like I'm in like pretty much a hypnotic state. So I'm seeing everything in my mind's eye. And I saw like mushrooms growing around the trees, and that was symbolic. Kalunyahawi ended up telling me later that she saw the mushrooms were glowing. Like she was also, since she is so tapped in, she was also seeing things on her end, like through her mind's eye. And so it was really validating because I feel like you naturally kind of question like what you see, but then to have her on the other end being like, "No, I see it too." It's like, okay. So that part was just insane. But she said that she saw the mushrooms glowing, which was an indication, like I had been feeling really pulled to mushrooms. So that was just like a random synchronicity that kind of like came up. I'm going to tell you guys every detail because everything just like ties in together. So we have the spiritual protection. Eugene's by my side, this like middle-aged looking man. And we go into a time machine, and we go up and we go down into the first lifetime that wants to come up. This is like kind of surreal, me me sharing this with somebody that's not like a really close friend. So we drop down and I'm in a forest again, except it's nighttime, and I'm confused a little bit at what I'm seeing because I'm thinking, we just got out of a forest. Why am I in a forest again? But the feeling was completely different. I'm getting chills just talking about it again. It was the overall vibe. I just remember telling her, it feels really creepy. It feels creepy. And she was like, okay, like, let's see, like, why you're here. Let's start, like, moving forward. And I take, like, a couple steps forward, and I can't move anymore. And I was like, I don't know if I'm doing this right. Like, this is my first time doing this. Like, I feel like I'm not going anywhere. And it was almost like Eugene, if this is what it felt like. His arm was, like, in front of me, holding me back from walking forward. And like I couldn't walk forward. I was trying, and of course this is like all in my mind's eye, but like I couldn't move forward. And I could just like turn around and see like a 360 view around me, and it was just the dark, creepy, eerie. It was eerie. I got like chills, but I couldn't see what I was there for. We waited a couple minutes and it was just silence while I was trying to move forward. And she said, okay, since like you're not able to see much from this lifetime, let's see if another lifetime wants to come up. I want to pause here and say, this lifetime that I jumped into, this like creepy forest, you need to listen to a later part of the podcast, because this will come up again after I get out of the regression. That was that for the time being. So we go into another timeline or lifetime, or she, suggested that I go into whatever timeline next wants to come up. And immediately I see these like swinging saloon doors in the middle of the forest. I'm seeing these swinging saloon doors. And then the scene kind of like morphs into like really like brown, Western, desert type saloon. It was a cowboy saloon. And I was like, I was double guessing like everything I was seeing, but she was confirming everything for me. And I'm in this cowboy saloon and I'm like, okay, not really sure what I'm doing here. I'm walking around. I'm telling her what I see. It's like, like what you would see in Western movies. It was like a bar, dusty, cowboys. There weren't any women in there. It was just men drinking beer. And she said, walk around and see if you can see a mirror and see like what you look like. So I walk around and I come across in the saloon, I found a big floor-length mirror, like floor-to-the-ceiling, gold rim, and I look in the mirror, and I'm a 41-year-old woman. My name was Lucy. I got a lot of details, by the way. Like, details were just coming to me very quickly. Side note, I think this is because I already practice meditation quite often, and I already have a pretty solid relationship with my third eye, and so it felt like these things came up easier than most people. Anyway, see myself. I'm a 41-year-old woman. My name's Lucy. I have like shorter, curly-ish hair. I'm wearing like this corset thing. And she asked me why I was there. And my response, what came through for me, was I was there to look for love. What came through for her, what I found out after when we had talked about the integration, she like let me have my full experience. Then after we got out of it, she was telling me things that came up for her. She picked up that I actually worked there, which made sense. I probably worked there to find love, to find men. But anyway, so she goes, why are you here? Why were you brought here? The whole point of going to past life regression is to either like go back to a lifetime where you need to heal something, or to see like a talent you had in a past life, or some herb mix that you used in a past life, or something to benefit you in this life. So she's asking me, why am I in this life? I started to get emotional, and I was debating sharing this publicly, but what came up was I was raped, and I could barely tell Kalunyahawi that. I was like choking up. And it was definitely something that I was holding on to. She says something along the lines of like, let's bring this man who raped you forward so we can forgive him, cleanse it from you, and leave this shit in the past. Because obviously, like, you were brought back to this because there is some part of your soul that has, like, held on to this. So we bring the man forward. He was very dirty looking, had a really scruffy beard, worn down clothes, cowboy hat. He had like a stick or a twig or something in his mouth. His energy was just off. And we said something along the lines of like, okay, I forgive you, blah, blah, blah. Like, I release this from me. I release this from my past. Like, I'm healed now. And then we offer to send him to the light. We offer to send him to the light. And you know what this man does? You know what this man does who raped me, who I'm seeing within my mind's eye many lifetimes after. He looks at me in my eyes and he spits on my shoes and he walks away. And I said to Kalunyahawi, I don't know if I just saw this right. This man just spit on my shoes and walked away. He did not go to the light. The light is up there. He walked to the right. He did not go to the light. Kalunyahawi said, yeah, sometimes that can happen. Sometimes the spirits like don't want to go to the light. I was like, what the hell? Anyway, left it from me. I did my fair share of letting go. That's his karma now. So she asked if there was anything else in this lifetime that needed to come up. Yes, apparently I had fallen in love with this like younger man. He was definitely a smaller build, couldn't grow a beard. He had like these really light blue eyes. His energy was just very like sweet and innocent. And when I saw him, his name was Timothy. When I saw him, like I felt his love, and it was just really pure. So I was like in this relationship with Timothy, and I got raped by this dirty ass man. And when that had happened, I just completely stopped talking to Timothy because I was afraid of him getting hurt. I was afraid of telling him and him leaving me and me getting hurt. And so I just held it in and stopped talking to him. And I held on a lot of guilt from that. That was almost just as painful. I almost like feel the emotions coming up for me again talking about this. That was almost just as painful as the emotions that came up from when I got raped. And so I talked to him and we let that go. He gave me a hug. He forgave me and he went to the light. He graciously went to the light. What a sweet guy. So then she asked if anything else was coming up. I said no. She's like, okay, great. Is there another lifetime that wants to come forward? Immediately, I'm like, shwoom. I walk out the saloon doors and I'm in a desert still. And I'm looking around and I'm a little confused because there is a paved road in front of me. And I'm like, I feel like I was in a different timeline where they didn't have paved roads right then, but I'm still in a desert, so I'm not really sure what's going on here. But Kalunyahawi's like, all right, just walk forward, see what you see. What do you hear? What do you feel? And it was kind of like a paved road in the middle of a desert. And I hear a baby crying. So we go to the baby crying, and there's a car on the side of the road. And, ooh, this one might make me emotional. I've really been working on integrating on, like, truly, like, healing from these things. Because I can tell that I have taken on these emotions into this life, which I'll get into, how that happens, and my process with that. But I see this car, I go over to it, and there's two women, I would say like middle-aged. I picked up on I have my notes. Kalunyahawi was taking notes the whole time and I have them in front of me. So it was 37, dark brown hair, named Melissa. That was me. And then I was driving. And then there was my friend, her name was Natalie. She was 35 years old and she was in the passenger seat. And basically, we were on our way to the hospital. Her water broke, and she was having her baby, and we didn't make it to the hospital in time. And the screaming baby was actually her. He looked, I'm bad with kids' ages. He looked maybe like anywhere from 2 to 4, maybe even 5. He was in the back seat in car seat, and he was screaming and screaming. And this is how you know it's real, because these are like real emotions coming up now. Basically, my friend had this baby and it passed away. I didn't make it. And I will spare you the details for any like people who may get triggered, but it was not a pretty scene. I held on to so much guilt. I felt like there was more I could do. But that's what I was holding on to, that life, was an immense amount of guilt. And that followed me in this life. Same thing with like, I'll get into the integration stuff later. I really was working on forgiving myself, knowing that I did the best that I could, and apologizing to my friend, and her understanding that like, you know, it wasn't my fault that her baby had passed, that we couldn't make it to the hospital in time. So I worked on that. We sent the baby spirit to the light, which was beautiful. And that was that life. But this was a really depressing life of mine. It was my most recent life. So I picked up that it was in the 1980s. We were in Arizona, which makes sense, of the desert. I was just, you know that like it's like claircognizant is when it's like the knowings, like you get just like, you just know things. That's how it was. Things were just coming to my brain and I just like knew where I was. I knew what the year was. I knew what our names were, without like us having to say them or seeing it somewhere. So anyway, 1980s in Arizona, I had picked up on that I had died a few years later of lung cancer. I was an only child. My parents, we were just regular, you know, middle class family. And I really didn't do much with my life. What I picked up on was, in that life, I was really, really playing small. I was very insecure. No husband, no kids, no boyfriend. I lived by myself at that age. And I died a few years later from lung cancer, which Kalunyahawi ended up telling me after, that the lungs is where you carry grief. And so it makes so much sense why I died of lung cancer, because I was holding on to a lot of grief. I died in 1980. I'm pretty sure I heard 1987 was the year that I had officially died. And I popped right back in 1996. I was born in 96. I'm 26 years old now. So more on why I came back so quickly later when I talk about the integration. So that was that for that life. Then Kalunyahawi asks, is there another life that you feel is coming up for you? And sure enough, swoosh, I get swooshed into this like totally different vibe. This was like, we were in the mountains. It was snowy. Let me see if I remember the year. 1634. Snowy mountains. I am an elderly, but very healthy, Indian looking woman. I'm not exactly sure what my ethnicity was, but I looked Indian. I had these 2 braids on the side of my head, and I had deep wrinkles in my face. I was seeing details, guys. I had deep wrinkles in my face. And I see in front of us, there was like, I don't remember if there was a count. It had to been like anywhere from 7 to 9 massive wolves. Like, I'm telling you, like 6 foot tall wolves. Now, this is just what came up for me, right? But I'm telling you what I saw. And Kalunyahawi was confirming everything for me. These massive wolves, and they're lined up next to each other, and they're kind of like bowing down to me, to us. My point of view when I'm like in that life was, I was almost like, in the Lucy life, I was looking like through her eyes. In the other life, I was looking kind of like over in the life where my best friend's baby had passed. And then in this life, I was almost like next to her, next to who I was in that lifetime. It was very different, like point of views that I was, like perspectives that I was seeing these lives. But so I'm kind of like standing next to myself, my Indian self. And we have these wolves bowing in front of us. And Kalunyahawi goes, why were you brought to this life? And I just felt this like insane amount of energy. And I was like, I was in my power in this life. Like, she asked me, she asked like the perfect questions for me to like get the answers that I needed to. She asked me like, what were the wolves there? What came up for me was they keep me sane and they keep me safe. It was like family. These wolves were like family. Like there was such like a love there. It was so crazy, the like energies I picked up on, the emotions that I picked up on through going, like it was a whole experience. So she's like, okay, so why are you here like in this life? What in this life like do you need to either heal from or pick up on? And I look at myself from that life, 1634, and she opens her palms out, and these two, I'm not kidding you guys, I'm just telling you what I saw. These two light beams came out of both hands. It's like yellowish, whitish, like beams of light straight towards the sky. And I'm getting chills talking about it again. As that was happening in real life, in my hypnotic state, as I'm sitting on my couch in my living room, my entire left arm, like this like tingly sensation shot up my left arm from the tips of my fingers all the way up to my shoulder. It was like strong, like a tingly, almost like numbing sensation, but my arm felt like alive. I've never felt that before. And I told Kalunyahawi because I was kind of freaked out when it happened. It happened kind of suddenly. It was like whoosh. And Kalunyahawi said, that's your healing hand, which is beneficial for me to know in this life if I ever decide to do like physical healing, any kind of Reiki work, which I have always felt called to. Since I was younger, I've always been like a natural healer. So it makes a lot of sense, that I was a very powerful healer in that life. But no, this woman had a lot of different kinds of powers. And so at this point, she had asked me something along the lines of, what exactly are these powers? And this woman was telling me that I can move time. And I was confused by that answer. And Kalunyahawi said, we're technically moving time now. We're literally going through past lifetimes, we're technically moving time now. So I'm like, okay, like I'm still figuring out that part, this whole integration process. I feel like it's going to take me still a few years to understand absolutely everything, if I ever understand everything in this life. But I still felt really called to share this story. So anyway, she says that I can move time and something about saving humanity. And Kalunyahawi had said something along the lines of, she like brought me and my past self together and we held hands, and it was I forget what exactly Kalunyahawi was like having us do or what exactly she said, but I think I was like asking her for like how I can bring my powers that I had in my past life to this life. And the woman told me, she said, you already have it, my dear. And Kalunyahawi said, like, I just needed to know that. I just needed that confirmation that my magic that I had in those lifetimes, I still have in this lifetime. Which, again, might sound out there, but there's a lot of things that we're going to be talking about in this podcast that are going to sound a little out there. I'm definitely here to open your mind some. But I could tell it was like that was what I needed in that lifetime. There was nothing else I needed to do in that lifetime. And I immediately felt my body starting to swoosh into another lifetime. My body was trying to take me into another lifetime again. And Kalunyahawi basically stopped it, and she brought the time machine back. So I was like kind of forced to stay. And she like had me with Eugene again. And she's like, okay, like go ahead in the time machine. We're going to take you back. She didn't even give me an option to go into another life. But my soul was trying to enter in more lifetimes because apparently it had more to heal from or more to like come up with that. So we get to the time machine. We go back into the present, into the now. I'm back in the living room on my couch, and this is where things get, a little crazier, is when we start talking about the integration stuff. When Kalunyahawi starts speaking up about what came up for her while she was in there with me. And so immediately once I open my eyes, I reach for my water bottle, my Yeti. I always have it with me. And I reach for my water bottle, and I was so dizzy. I was started to black out. I was like, whoa. And I like took a few breaths, and Kalunyahawi said, take it slow. Like, you just went through 4 lifetimes. And that just hit with me. I was like, I'm actually dizzy right now because I literally just went through 4 lifetimes. Like, we literally kind of time traveled. Like, how insane. So I'm hydrating. My mouth is really dry. It was crazy to see my physical like reactions. And we start talking about, what came up. She said, you healed from this life with the rape situation. Was there anywhere in this life where you feel like that was still affecting you in some way? And if so, how can you integrate it to like let it go? And the integration is really, really important. If you ever get a past life regression and they do not do an integration process with you, they're doing it wrong. Because in order to do the past life regression, the purpose of it is to like release or to get these pieces of knowledge from it to benefit your life. And I will say, I'm literally only saying this. This is very vulnerable. I'm literally only saying this for anyone who also who may have experienced similar things and who it may resonate with, that maybe you had past life experiences that are still affecting you this present life. But I will say, ever since I was a little girl, I had attracted circumstances where I was sexually taken advantage of. And it just is what it is. I knew from a very, very young age, like the law of attraction, they say like, you attract to yourself based off of like your thoughts and emotions, etc. I knew when I was, at that young age, I wasn't doing anything to attract these traumatic experiences, but it was because I was holding on to it from a past life. It was kind of like my karma. Because I wasn't letting it go, I was dragging it with me, which is why it's really, really, really important to forgive, okay? Anyone and everyone, not for their sake, but for your sake, to let go of that energy, to really process and heal through things. So you don't take it with you to different lifetimes, because if you don't heal it in this life, you're going to have to heal it in the next or the next or the next. It's just going to keep carrying with you. So I thought that was very interesting that pattern had came up in my life, quite a few times, and I got to heal that. I got to let that go and really integrate that. We talked about the grief of what I felt, the grief from leaving Timothy in my Western life, and then the grief of my best friend's baby passing away because we didn't get to the hospital in time. And also the same thing from when I was a little girl, I had always carried the sense of like feeling so bad for other people. I was very empathic when I was young, and as I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate to. And I could pick up on other people's energies very easily. And if anyone was feeling low, feeling sad, feeling depressed, I felt so much grief. I felt responsible to like help bring them up. And there was so much like responsibility of like I wish I could do more. Whew. You can tell I'm still like healing through this. And so we talked about that. We talked about like the integration of really working on releasing that and reminding myself when it comes up again in this lifetime to remind myself that other people's emotions are not my responsibility. And when I feel this grief for other people that I have nothing to do with, I just feel someone else's pain and I immediately feel like grief for them, I can recognize that this isn't my pain, that this was a traumatic experience that happened in my past lifetime, and that it is safe for me to let go. It's safe for me to let go of somebody else's pain because somebody else's emotions are not my emotions, they're not my responsibility. And so that was really, really healing for me. Now, that being said, she started to talk about the first lifetime that we had popped into. Now, I hope you stayed to this point because this is where it gets really interesting. I knew I had magic in many of my lifetimes intuitively, whatever quote unquote magic like is to you. So she told me when we had entered that past life where we were in the creepy, eerie forest, I didn't hear anything. It was like almost like white noise. I didn't really hear anything, and Eugene wasn't letting me see anything. Kalunyahawi was there. She was able to walk forward. I wasn't able to walk forward. Eugene was protecting me. Kalunyahawi said that she had walked forward and she was hearing this really loud screaming, and there were torches. And as she's telling me this, I'm out of my hypnotic state. I am fully conscious, and I am getting flashes of images in my mind as she's telling me this. Before she's telling me this, I'm getting flashes, like it's like she's about to say the word and I like immediately get the image in my brain, and I'm like it was a lot. There were torches. I'm getting body chills talking about this. I was 19 years old. My name was Abigail. I was in this forest with, she said it seemed like my family, and there was a woman in all black. She was the priestess. She was very powerful, and she was judging me. She was basically punishing me. Around my family, it looked like I couldn't see who was in the circle, but it felt like boys and girls were there, because I was getting the flashes of images while she was saying this. Like, I was seeing it while she was saying it. I just wasn't seeing it in that timeline, like full on. I was getting like tiny bits and pieces, and basically I was being punished because my family all practiced black magic and I refused. I was only wanting to practice white magic, and I refused to dabble in black magic, and I was being punished for that. And I think that is how I had passed away in that life. And Eugene was really protecting me, because I think it really would have genuinely traumatized me to see that full on. Kalunyahawi said that she felt intuitively that it was meant to come across, the information was meant to come across from her telling me, and me just getting the tiny snippets and the bits, rather than me full on seeing it, because it would have been traumatic for me. So I'm very grateful that that information came to me in that way. I will say I was a little freaked out for the next few weeks, because the flash image of the priestess was, I just felt her energy, and it was very, very dark. But Kalunyahawi was reassuring me that that was a past life. It's safe to leave it in the past, and that is not going to any longer affect me in this life, which I find that really crazy in general, because I am very much so, if you know me personally, I'm a very genuine, like, good-hearted person, and I'm familiar with black magic in this life. It's not something that I would ever want to get near. Actually, when we were in Salem, every year we were in Salem, and we would go into these stores that sold more black magic type things, like different spell kits and voodoo dolls and different things that were for negative intentions. I would physically get dizzy. I would get lightheaded. I would get nauseous in those stores. My soul did not let me stay in those stores. I literally had to remove myself from those black magic stores in Salem, Massachusetts. So I just find it really crazy that I'm so repelled to black magic in this life, and how that links up to my lifetime that many years ago. I don't think I picked up on a year on that lifetime. I don't think I picked up on a year for that. She had also told me that my spirit guide, Eugene, that middle-aged man with the glasses and the mustache, who kind of had like, almost like, he was a sweetheart. He had like very sweet energy. She told me that he was my dad in my Western life. Lucy, Eugene was Lucy's dad. And when she had told me that, I saw the way I looked in that mirror. I told you how in the saloon I looked in the mirror, and then I'm like seeing Eugene next to me, and I realized we had like the same nose and like this like a similar smile, and it was so like cute to see the physical resemblance in us both. I was taller than him. Whoever my mom was must have been tall, or there must have been some tall gene, because I was taller than my dad, Eugene. You know, it took me some time to process everything. Oh my God, and I felt so bad because I was going on a date after this past life regression. I had a date planned, and my date, I spent so long in this past life regression. Kalunyahawi told me that like most people, if they see anything, they see like 1, max 2 lifetimes. Like no one sees, like very rare someone sees that many. And so she wasn't expecting it to be that long. I wasn't expecting it to be that long. I'm looking at my phone and I'm still like processing, going through so many different lifetimes, all the information that just came to me. And my date is like texting me like, are you still down? Like it's getting late. I'm like, oh my God. I went to this date and the entire time I felt so bad. I went to this date and the entire time I'm just like, holy shit. I can't believe I experienced this in my lifetime. Holy shit. Oh my God, I felt so bad. Anyway, as I'm like processing this the next few days, I realized how precious and meaningful that it was that Eugene, who is now one of my like well-known spirit guides, how he stepped forward during that time, because in that time in my life, around that same exact time period, was when me and my dad in this life actually had a pretty serious falling out. And so I wasn't speaking to my dad in this life anymore. And it was just very meaningful for Eugene to step forward, because he had so much fatherly love for me. And I could feel the love and the care that he had for me. And it was so sweet before we separated ways after the regression. He told me he'll always be with me and that I'm always watched over. And I feel his presence with me constantly. I've developed such a stronger relationship with him after that fact. But the fact that Eugene had stepped forward right after I had that falling out with my father in this life was just, it was like, you're okay. Like, you're good. Like, you're still loved. Okay, I was not expecting to get this emotional. But you can see, like, how crazy this shit can get. How wild it can get. And after looking and evaluating and processing my lifetimes that I had, it really made me realize why I came into this life. I died in 87, right? I came in not even 10 years later, 96. I popped in to my family that I was raised in now. And I grew up with such a heart and a very, very strong mission to bring light to this world, to help others, to bring others up, to really make like a massive impact. And it makes so much sense. I was punished for my white magic. I was punished for not doing negative black magic. The other lifetimes that I picked up on after that lifetime, I was living in fear. Western life, I didn't say this before, but in that life, I also picked up on that I was very, very insecure, and I basically like didn't have a backbone, and I was living in a lot of fear. Next lifetime that I picked up on in the 1980s, so much fear. I was like drowned out by fear. I was too afraid to do anything that I actually wanted. I played it safe my entire life. I had this safe job. I didn't get in a relationship just to be safe. I barely had any friends just to be safe. I was living in so much fucking fear. And it just makes so much sense as to, I grew up in this lifetime. I grew up in my family where I'm one of 7 kids, and it was really chaotic, and we grew up really poor, and I had all of these circumstances that made me feel the same way, made me feel the same kind of fear. And I grew up so insecure with that same overall feeling. It's that same feeling. I felt it. The same feeling that I felt when I was growing up. I felt it in my past lifetimes, and it was brought to me. I was ridiculed and so much fear from that one lifetime. I dragged that with me through so many lifetimes. And in this lifetime, I am here to bust right through that. I am here to break through those fears, to really like live fucking large, to really show the world who I fucking am, to really bring the light that I wanted to lifetimes ago. And I feel like getting this past life regression brought such a fire under my ass to like do what I feel called to do, to get my message out there, to help anyone and everyone that I see, because it's not worth it to live in fear. It's not worth it to not go after the things that you want. It's not worth it to be so afraid of what's going to happen, to just not do anything at all. I'm really proud of myself, my 19-year-old self in that lifetime, for standing up for what I believed in. The circumstance sucked, but it is what it is. Everything happens for a reason. And I've learned so many lessons through that. And I knew I had many, many lifetimes. Ever since I was a younger girl, I've always related to being a very old soul. I've always have been mature for my age. Anyone who knows me personally knows that I've always been very mature for my age. Always had like older friends typically, and I just related to always being an old soul. And obviously I had way more than just those 4 lifetimes, but it just put so much together for me. And so these past life regressions can really, truly help just make your life make more sense. I would say only do it if you truly feel called to. If you still have trauma and shit in this life that you haven't dealt with yet, that you haven't dealt with yet, I say don't venture off into past lives, because you need to heal the shit in this life before you go into your past lives. I was doing about 4 years of deep inner healing work before I kind of felt called to do this past life regression. So if you feel called, I would say only do the past life regression. Not to say you have to be fully healed whatsoever, because that's not even a thing. But these past life regressions can be very helpful to heal certain karmic cycles that you're still holding on to. It can be really helpful, and I ended up reading after my regression, and I told my friends about it. They were like, you need to read Many Lives, Many Masters, written by Brian, oh God, how do you say his last name? Weiss, Weiss, I think. Hopefully I didn't mess that up. But that book is really fascinating too. It goes into, past life stuff. And I ended up reading that book after the fact, and it just made me realize, how much you can heal through these past life regressions, how many anxieties and depression that you can bring into this life that is from past life. And you'll hear me, like, I have a YouTube channel for my business, Better You by Sabrina, and I've said in my YouTube channel videos, like, about how I was depressed for as long as I could remember. When I was as little as I could remember, I was a very, very sad girl. And I thought it was my circumstances that I grew up in, which I now realize I chose this family to go into because it would help to amplify those. It was to continue those karmic cycles and amplify that feeling so I could heal it, which I'm now very grateful for. But yeah, depressed for as long as I could remember. It was because my past lives. So you never know what you're carrying on to this life from your past lives. And it's just so eye-opening. And it truly helped me put so much of my life together. It was so healing, and it really just connected me so much more to my mission in this life. And not everyone has like this big raving mission, like, oh my God, I want to do all of these things to like help humanity, right? Help the collective, help bring up the light. Not everyone has that really strong mission. If you do, that's great. But if you don't, that's still great. I really feel like I just have that mission because it's a part of like the progression from what I went through in these lives. And if you're interested in getting a past life regression, I want to say, like, for tips for getting into it, I would really suggest practice meditation, practice silent meditation, practice hypnosis, just practice getting into that state. It's a specific brainwave state that you get into when you enter that state, and that state is where you're able to see a lot more and connect much more with your intuition, connect much more with your third eye. So practice visualization, practice silent meditations, practice hypnosis, practice getting in that state, practice seeing through your mind's eye, just practice visualizing like your future or something. That's like exercising that muscle. Practice that before you go into your past life regression, and you're going to have much stronger messages come up for you, because I truly think that's why I had so much coming up for me. Kalunyahawi had said that nobody had had that much come up for them before. That she had, you know, been with before. I know there's other people who have, I'm sure, has had more come up than me. I also want to say, if you're interested in doing this past life regression, don't go into it thinking that you're going to be like, oh, this is so cool. Like, I'm going to see some cool shit. Like, I'm going to get high before I do it. Don't come in with that intention. You need to be serious, especially if you decide to work with Kalunyahawi. She's not going to take your shit, okay? You need to be serious. You're here for spiritual development, for spiritual growth, not some just a, haha, that was fucking cool. Like, what's the point of doing it if you're not going to integrate or utilize or have this information benefit your life in any way? You're still going to be living out the same damn karmic cycles if you don't. So take this seriously. If you decide to go through it, go with someone you trust. Make sure that they have an integration process afterwards, and they don't just take you through a past life regression and then say, okay, you're all done. Or I personally like how Kalunyahawi guided me. Like, I was seeing things and she was confirming for me. I know some people have said that there are certain practitioners out there, I'm not even sure if that's the right word, but people out there that will just simply tell you what they see. And I don't like that either, because then you don't get like that confirmation. You know, I've always been a big, as open-minded as I am, I've always also been equally skeptic. So be skeptic with the people that you work with. Make sure it's someone legit. I will leave Kalunyahawi's information below, because she does offer past life regressions. And again, I've hyped her up so much, but she is absolutely incredible. Very, very powerful, very tapped in. So I will leave her information below if you are interested in contacting her to sign up for your own personal past life regression and see what comes up for you to heal and to integrate and to benefit your life for not only this time, but for future lifetimes too. So I truly hope that this podcast was insightful, entertaining. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to share this podcast with your friends and let me know how you like these episodes. I'll link my Instagram down below as well so you can find me. But if you're still listening at this point, I just wanted to thank you for listening so much about my personal journey. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Much love to you.